Hos Angeles, a multifaceted podcast covering any topic that I can find a resource on. Recorded right here in LA. I am your host, Alex, just another wannabe comedian who can't stick to just one topic. And this week, it's going to be the greatest podcast that there ever was, that there ever has been, because today with me, I have my esteemed guest, Mr. Manoli. How's it going, Manoli?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good, man. And I am really excited about today's topic because we are going to do a quick NBA draft recap and mostly talk about the state of your Washington Wizards. So why don't you do a little introduction, Manoli, and talk about your expertise on the Washington Wizards, since I had to search far and wide for one.
I mean, when we say expertise, really the expertise is just as being terrible. I mean, it's being a fan of a team for 30 years and just watching them be miserable for 30 years is insanely difficult to keep coming back to the well to just be depressed constantly.
Yeah, they're not very good,
So,
are they?
no, I mean, they're never good, man. It's right up there with your Commanders.
That's right. Yeah, but you got out of that one. You didn't have to be a Commanders fan. You're
Yeah,
just
thank God for that.
simply Wizards.
No, but I mean, overall, really, the expertise just comes from watching this team, just the up and downs of trying to love a team that just can't get it together.
It's been, I mean, you say that, but it was a fun decade, like the 2010s. I thought we were never that great, and we had two good seasons, but it wasn't that bad, right? It's just been rough the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back that far, right? I mean, what was that? 2010? Was it that long ago? I mean, what were the
The last
years where?
rebuild, you mean?
Yeah, kind of in that time frame. It's even 14 and 15 when LeBron kept knocking us out of the playoffs at his first stint in
Which
Cleveland.
time? He's knocked us out of the playoffs so many times.
Yeah, the first stint in Cleveland. I mean, we must have ran into them like for 3 or 4 years in a row. We got them in the playoffs, and we either got them in the first round or we got them in the second round. And
Mhm.
every year is just, I mean, it's just LeBron. Like
No, I
it's just
think
there's nothing
I
you can
could.
do about that.
Yeah, I think I could be wrong on this, but I think the Gilbert teams never made it out of the first round of the playoffs. I might have that mistaken.
I remember vividly a second round matchup against Cleveland. I think
Okay.
they were the 1 and we were the 4,
Hmm.
but that was with Wall and Beal and Porter and Gortat. And I want to say that's when we had that like 2 year stint with Paul Pierce when we were actually pretty good and we went small ball and Pierce played the 4.
So I'm pretty sure the year with Paul Pierce was when we lost to the Hawks in the second round when John Wall broke his wrist. And then I think the year we lost to the Celtics was when they had like Trevor Ariza. Uh, I don't
I get
think,
my years that messed up.
I don't think John Wall's Wizards ever faced the LeBron like Cavs, but
I feel like they did, man.
all right, well, we'll take a look at that. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to talk about a team that has such a bleak future ahead of them because now we're entering like the rebuild of rebuilds. If you haven't been following, the Wizards have gutted the team, like torn it the fuck down, and there is like nothing of substance left. So how did we get here, Manoli? How did we end up in this complete state of disarray as a Wizards fanatic and the Wizards organization overall?
Well, real quick, we just need to point out I was wrong. Alex is very much right. Good memory, dude. I have my years messed up. So yeah, it would have been 2 or 3 years before that when, or maybe even 5 or 6 years before that when we had Gilbert and Jameson is when we kept running into LeBron and losing. But
Mm-hmm.
had to correct myself. But for the current state, man, really after Pierce left, right? So this was 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. Pierce leaves. We end up in a situation where we have three good players, right? We've got Wall, we have Beal, and we have Otto Porter. Porter's up for a contract, kind of around the same time Wall is. Wall gets an extension. And from there, they say, well, we kind of want to keep these three together, right? What are we going to
Mm-hmm.
do? They kept floating Porter along and then ultimately decided not to pay him, which probably at the end of the day was the right decision. They shipped him off to Chicago, if I remember correctly. And that was probably the right idea. However, they never really brought any reinforcements in. Whatever they tried was short-term rentals. Like as a franchise, we don't know how to draft.
Mm-hmm.
So we never brought in anything that was at all helpful. But from there, it's just been a downward spiral. I mean, we paid Wall and we paid Beal. For some reason, we gave Beal a no trade like contract or clause in his contract. It makes no sense. I don't know why you would do that
Mhm.
to somebody that isn't a top 5 player in the league. Like I don't even think LeBron and like Luka have no trade clauses in their contracts.
No, he was the only player in the league at this point that had a no trade.
Yeah, which is wild. So I truthfully I think the answer to your question is we lucked into a couple good draft picks there. I mean the draft with Wall, I think we were slotted to have like the 4th or 5th pick, and
And
I
got
think
the
the ping
first
pong balls,
overall.
yeah, the ping pong balls just bounced our way,
Hmm.
and there was no one else really to take at one. There was the decision was made, like you had to take Wall with that pick that year. Then the following, I guess maybe it was 3 years later. How long after that was it that Beal came into the league, man?
Wall was the 2010 draft and Beal was the 2012 draft because it went Wall, Vesley in 2011 and then Beal in 2012. So 2 years
What a
later.
mess Jan Vesely was. Jesus,
Yeah.
that's a terrible name to bring up. But yeah, like that draft with Bradley Beal, right? Like let's pull up that draft.
It
Who was the
was
number one
Anthony
pick that
Davis
draft?
1, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist 2, Beal 3, and then I think the next few picks it was like Thomas Robinson and Damian Lillard and Dion Waiters. So I mean, they made the right pick with Beal. They got lucky that the
Yeah, I think we got really
Bobcats
lucky that
didn't take
didn't
him.
take Beal. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. Because after that, like Dion Waiters, I mean, he was a 6 man at best. Like I think he started a little bit for Cleveland, but he basically was just like a poor man's J.R. Smith. Like he got hot a
Mhm.
little bit, but J.R. Smith's actually just a good basketball player. Otherwise, in that draft, like we wouldn't have done anything smart. So you're right. We lucked into Bradley Beal there, and he was the perfect backcourt mate for Wall. He was happy to play off the ball. He was happy to catch and shoot. He was happy to defend.
Mhm.
But from there, like we were okay, right? We're ascending from this 20, what do we say, 2012 draft. We're looking up. We're like, all right, this is okay. We've got a good backcourt. I think we had Gortat on the roster coming in around this point. We got him
Mhm.
from was it from Phoenix is where we traded for him?
I'm not sure. It sounds right.
I think that's right. I remember I want to say we gave up like a couple picks for him.
Yeah, and those teams were fun, but a few years later, a lot of John Wall injuries, a lot of bad contracts, and now it's just gotten completely out of control. So I want to talk a little bit about the trades the Wizards just made in the last few days. So it is Friday, June 23rd, 2023. And let's just go through what the Wizards have done. I mean, we went into this offseason with some exciting players on the roster, and now I don't know a single name on the team. But let's just start with Beal. I mean, we had to deal him, like you mentioned, he had a no trade clause. He was like the second highest played player in the league, and he wasn't even playing that much. He was hurt so much last year, and the year before that, even more.
Yeah, he spent a lot of the last couple of years hurt. I mean, truthfully, even when we had Wall and Beal running at the backcourt, the both of them were always hurt. Neither of them could stay on the court together, so it wasn't
Mhm.
like we actually had a good backcourt. We would have had one of the best backcourts with them, but after we moved Wall, now we're just stuck with Beal, right? And stuck with isn't really a great phrasing because he's a great player, but he didn't have any help. Like he had no wing support on the other side of the court. He had no one that could play point guard. Yeah, we had some big men that could bang down low, but truthfully, Beal was asked to do too much for the last 2 seasons, maybe even
Mhm.
3 seasons. This year we tried, right?
Yeah.
We brought in Kuzma, we brought in Porzingis. We said, hey, we've got some actual talented basketball players on the squad. And again, maybe we actually have like a backroom staff issue where we just can't keep players healthy. But Kuzma and Porzingis this year spent a lot of time injured. I mean, I think the stat at the end of the season was they only played something like 30 or 35 games, the three of them together for the year. And when you put 75% of your salary cap in those three players, you're only going to be so good, you know,
Mhm.
and they have to hit. If you're going to have a legitimate big three, those three players have to be just studs for your team. They play 70 games a season. They have to put up 20 a night and they have to carry the team. And that's what's got to happen. And that just didn't happen. They didn't play enough. When they did play, they were good. I mean, Kuzma had a career year. Porzingis had a great year. Beal, when he played, did Beal things, but we didn't have a point guard. So really,
Yeah.
the team was never going to gel because they tried to make Beal into a playmaker, which he can do, but that's not his game. Like his game is to be an off the ball scorer and to concentrate on scoring. Like I think the last 2 seasons are the highest assist totals Beal's had in his career, and he can do it because he's a good basketball player, but that's not his forte.
That's right. So what did our poor Wizards get for former All-Star and former I think great NBA player Bradley Beal? What did we receive?
So they shipped Beal to Phoenix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chris Paul came back to the Wizards in return. We also got Landry Shamet and just a plethora of pick swaps, which we'll get into that because I think that's probably the most
Worthless
egregious
pick
part of
swaps,
this
yeah.
trade. Yeah. And then a bunch of second round picks. I mean, they gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 second round picks, which I mean, this isn't like the NFL where second round picks actually hold any value.
Yeah, exactly.
The NBA, I think the stats like only 40% of second round picks actually make the opening day roster. So
yeah,
like,
they're scratch off
those,
tickets. We're hoping for a
yeah,
Jokic, right? Like, I mean, that's what this is. We're buying a bunch of scratch off tickets and hoping we'll
yeah, but
win
we
the
can't, we
lottery.
can't draft though. So like, what good does that do us? We have to be one of the worst drafting franchises in the
Mhm.
league. So what is compiling draft picks other
That's
than
but
to flip them
you
for
know
players?
that is the old regime. You know, they have cleaned
That's
house.
fair.
Perhaps
That's
the new
fair.
scouts can find somebody. I mean, I'd still think it's a shot in the dark, but I guess we got to give them a shot. And the thing is, there really isn't much to say about this trade because we had absolutely no leverage. Like we already talked about this, but Beal had a no trade clause, right? So he could pick where he wanted to go, and his agent's son is the CEO of the Phoenix Suns. So he basically orchestrated this trade here and only here.
I think it's the other way around, but yeah, there's a
Mm-hmm.
weird relationship between Beal's agent and then
The
the person that
Suns.
runs the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So they,
it's just it's
yeah,
strange. And again, the part of this trade that just made the least sense to me is these pick swaps. Like, what the fuck are we gonna do with a pick swap next year for the Phoenix Suns? Right? Like,
I
they're gonna
guess
be
you're banking
like
on
they're
him.
gonna
Yeah,
what is everyone gonna get hurt? Is that what we're praying for? That
maybe in
KD blows
three
out a knee?
years. Yeah, maybe in 2 years. Durant wants out of town. Booker gets hurt. Beal retires. Who knows? They
That's the
could
only
fall
thing.
apart,
Yeah,
and
like
then
these
it could
pick
be worth
swaps
it.
are. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean that I'm with you. You want to know what's crazy? I was literally in Phoenix for work this week, and I was at a
Yeah,
bar, and they were all trashing Beal. Like all the bartenders, they're all Suns fans, and they're just like, he's small, he's not going to be any good, he's not going to be better than Chris Paul. They're not psyched.
they don't know what they're getting. Then Beal's a
Beal's a really good
fantastic
player, and I'm
wing.
like,
He's not a point guard. That's the one thing that Phoenix
mhm,
we're going to deviate here. Phoenix is going to have to figure out who's going to run point. Booker and Beal are both two guards, maybe three. They're a little
mhm.
undersized to play three, but they both play on the wing. Like they don't have anyone that can play point now, so they're going to have to get someone. Maybe they'll find like a Rondo circa 2008 that can show up on a minimum veteran deal to play point, but like they need something. But anyway, like back to the trade though, man. Like these pick swaps are just wild to me. That's the part that makes the least amount of sense. Now, granted, like you said, we had no leverage. Like we had to do basically whatever Beal wanted.
Mhm.
And like if I remember correctly from the reports, like Miami was supposedly offering a pretty good package for Beal. I think it even included a couple first rounders, or it included like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson in like a first rounder, like
Yeah,
some
that's not
usable
bad at all.
players. Yeah, and like again, the Heat would have been good, so that first round pick isn't that valuable, but at least it's something. And
Yeah.
with these pick swaps, we have 24, 26, 28, and 30. Like next year's not a usable pick swap. In theory, 26 shouldn't be either because yeah, you've got the tail end of KD there, but you've still got Booker and Beal like
Mhm.
mostly still being studs on the wing. Maybe 28 and 30 is where this will actually really come to play. But like again,
You're
now
excited
we're in
about
a
drafting.
five.
Yeah. You're excited about
Yeah,
drafting some middle schoolers. Is that it, Manoli?
like, listen, man, some of those guys can ball. Like if we
Those
saw
12
Zion
year
on middle
olds.
school, we would have been impressed.
That's just the part that gets me every time. We're sitting here trading these very real players for 12 year olds, and I just can't wrap my brain around it. It's such
I
a
think it
it's
goes to what you said earlier. Like they're just lottery tickets. Like you're just praying that something down the
mhm,
line works out in your favor. And I think that's really the big thing with the NBA as a whole. Like when you look at these teams, the way that they're constructed now and how much power the players have, they just go wherever they kind of really want because the the teams will just cut or get rid or dump contracts, whatever they have to do to clear the cap space. When someone someone like KD says, "Hey, I want to come to Phoenix," they're like, "Okay,
Hmm.
man, we'll send 6 first-round picks to Brooklyn for you." I think 6 is exaggerating, but they sent what, 3 or 4 firsts,
Hmm.
which is why they didn't have any for Beal. But
Right.
they just do anything they can because all that matters is the top 3 or 4 players on that roster, and then everyone else just comes on the minimums now because they just want to chase rings, which I get, but it leaves other teams that aren't lucky enough to have one of those stars just in shambles how the Wizards are. Like the
Yeah.
Wizards now, the good news, the only positive, like if I'm going to try to not be super pessimistic for a minute here, is that when you look at how the Wizards are going to have to operate, the new GM that we got is out of Oklahoma City. His name is Will. I'm blanking on his last name.
Dawkins, Will
Will
Dawkins.
Dawkins, and he's out of the Oklahoma City system, which to me is a positive, right? Because what
Right.
Oklahoma City's done, they're a small market. When they came from Seattle, right, they drafted KD in Seattle. Then they come to Oklahoma City, they draft Russell Westbrook, and then they draft Harden. So you draft 3 MVPs in a row. Like, granted,
Yeah.
that's an ultra high bar to set for Will to come to DC and do the same. But my point being is that they build through the draft. They're not a big market team where they can just flash the lights of LA or be like, hey, come down to South Beach. Let's try to win a ring down here. Like that's not what they do. And truthfully, you think that DC might have some polling power. It is the capital of the world,
You know,
but it has no polling power. No one wants to come to DC. We couldn't even get KD to come to DC, and he's from there.
yeah, and this is something you and I have talked about a bunch, and I want to know if you think my little theory has any credence to it. Is I just believe that the Washington Wizards brand is just such a joke. And unfortunately, there's not really any repairing it short of you somehow win like 3 championships in a row. Because, I use this example to you. I think not that, Bullets is even anything better, but when they rebranded the team from Bullets to Wizards with no originality, no reason to be called the Wizards other than alliteration. They just destroyed any value someone could have in terms of like a history associated with the team or any kind of self-respect someone could have for playing for the Washington professional basketball organization. And this is the example I use. If you're a young guy in the NBA and you're, a fringe starter, or maybe you're even a starter, and you went out to a bar and you met a girl and she asked what you did and you said you played in the NBA, or no, let's just say you said, I'm a Wizard, I play for the Wizards. I would argue that probably 60% of people would think you're talking about a EuroLeague team or a semi-pro team. Like, it doesn't even sound like an NBA team unless someone's actually connected. And there's a reason the Bobcats changed their name back to the Hornets. Like, it was the same kind of thing, just such a utterly atrocious brand that brought nothing to it. And I think that matters to these free agents. Like, it's not the same as saying I'm a Knick, I'm a Laker, I'm a Chicago Bull. If you say you're a Wizard, I just think there's no cachet, there's no pizzazz, there's no value in that name because there's no history or even respect associated with that organization. And it's something I think should really worry the Washington Commanders as well, because it's not easy to build respect into a brand. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first thoughts, the Commanders need to go back to the Washington football team. That's way better and way
So
funnier. The
much
Commanders
better.
is terrible. It's so terrible. But anyways, for the Wizards, the Wizards is it's a childish name, man. I think really that's what we're getting at here. I mean,
Mhm.
their mascot, his name is G Wiz. Oh shucks, what are we doing here? That's ridiculous. So it's just you're right. It goes to the state of the franchise as a whole where they just aren't taken seriously.
Mhm.
And that's probably why we can't attract free agents. We don't get anyone to come play for this team. Weirdly, again, Paul Pierce said, I don't know how that happened, but no one else comes to play for this team. I mean, that's probably the biggest name we've signed in a long time in free agency, and he was on the tail end of his career.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
this was, and did he even sign? Did we trade for Paul Pierce? I don't
I
even remember,
believe
but
he signed as a free agent, but I don't think we had much competition there.
yeah, so this was after, this wasn't even directly after Boston, because from Boston he went to Brooklyn on that hilarious trade that
Mhm.
Brooklyn tried. But it's not great, man. So the only positive I can see here is that at least the new GM has come in and said, this is terrible. Let me just tear
Right.
this down to the fucking studs and let's see if we can try to build through the draft, and maybe we'll be good in 8 years. Like there's nothing, we don't have the players, we don't have enough capital in draft picks to try to be better any sooner than that. So truthfully, we're going to be relying on some luck, and we're just going to be taking, probably for the next few seasons, just be taking bad contracts from teams and just say, yeah, we'll eat that contract if you give us a couple picks, and then just pray that that team gets bad shortly.
You're so right. And I think one of the reasons the 8-year window makes sense is the saddest part is that in the NBA, the youth is so young and all of the top tier teams are veteran led. So it's not like in baseball or hockey or even football to an extent, you can build a really young roster and still have a chance to compete year in and year out. That you just can't do that in the NBA. Every team that makes it to the late rounds of the playoffs that have any kind of sustained success are led by guys in their late 20s or even early 30s. That's just when, they kind of hit their peak and hit their stride in the NBA. And I think part of it is just when you go young in the NBA, you're dealing with guys who can't legally drink. I mean, the kid we just drafted is 18. He's not even 19 yet. So
I think both of the kids we just drafted are 18.
Oh my God. But there's just the thing. There's just no hope. There's no way you could just have a sick run in the NBA with a team of all 22 and unders,
Yeah, you don't see very many instances where a team goes from worst to first like it does in the NFL. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot in the NFL, but it happens, I mean, pretty regularly. How often? I mean, the NFC East, both of us are NFC East fans. And I think until this season, I think the Eagles went back to back, right?
No, they haven't, because last year the Cowboys won the division. This year,
did we? Okay, I should know that. But
there
hasn't been a reoccurring winner in since 15 years. Yeah, it's a long time. Yeah. So, anyways, point being that's more realistic in the NFL, because I think, to your point, I mean, the people that come into the NFL, they're just older. Like, I mean, we're drafting kids 18, 19, 20, and we're asking them to go against guys that are 25,
fully
30,
grown men.
Fully grown men. And there's very few people that come in at 18 and 19 and have just developed. Like, if we look at Wemby, he looks like a twig. Like, he looks like a taller version of Durant when Durant came out of Texas. That's what he looks like. But Durant now is a filled out grown man. There's a big difference between someone at 18 and 19 and someone that's at 27, 28. Like, those, just naturally, your body, your muscles fill out. And that's just, in the NBA, that's really important. It's a physical game. It's played above the rim. It's played with power, and it's played with speed. And you kind of need to be a grown ass man to do that.
I totally agree. So I don't mean to get off this, but I want to quickly go over the other two big trades from the Wizards, and then I want to talk to the draft. So we also traded Kristaps Porzingis. We sent him to the Celtics. The Grizzlies received Marcus Smart, and in this 3-team trade, we received Tyus Jones, Danilo Gallinari, former New York Knick, right? I remember Gallinari.
He got drafted by the Knicks. Yeah,
December
8. It was a long time ago, but yeah.
Mike Muscala, and then the 35th overall pick that we ended up trading, but we'll get to that. So, I mean, another deal where we had no leverage. He actually did us a favor by opting into his contract and agreeing to this, or he would have left for nothing. I think he had some benefits based on kind of the changes to the upcoming. I think there's some what is it called?
Yeah, something with the CBA coming up.
Yeah, so the CBA agreement's being changed or something. So that was the reason why. I don't know too much more than that, but I think that there was a benefit to him opting in for this 1-year deal for, I think, $36 million. I mean,
other than it being $36 million, that's not a bad
otherwise
reason either.
The Celtics get the best player in this deal and 2 first-round picks. I don't know a lot.
The Celtics do what the Celtics do, man. Like, they just
they're just a well-run organization that people respect.
Yeah, it's just the most annoying fucking thing in the world. Like, I know now we have Brad Stevens running the show, but even before, when Danny Ainge was there, like, this is what they did. Like, they somehow fleeced people out of good players and somehow ended up with picks, and that's what they've done.
Didn't they have the number 1 overall pick that ended up being Markelle Fultz and then shipped it to the Sixers and then ended up with the 3rd overall pick that was Tatum? Isn't that right? Or am I having? Do I have that wrong?
No, that sounds right. I know they had obviously they had a really high pick if they took Tatum, because I think Tatum came in and they were a pretty good team still.
But they got all those picks from the The Nets
from
deal you
the
referenced earlier,
the
the Kevin
Brooklyn
Garnett and
Nets.
Paul
Yeah,
Pierce. Yeah.
yeah, they gave him first round picks for like 30 years, and then
Yeah.
they went there and were awful. They were just all over the bridge.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just what Boston does, man. It's a well-run organization. It must be really weird to be a fan of a team like that.
I can't even imagine. But they say this
Yeah,
that Tyus Jones, I don't know much about him. I believe he went to Duke, but I
yeah. You
think
don't remember him at Duke?
vaguely, but they're saying he
He was
could
a
be
good player at Duke.
they say he could be a valuable trade chip for the Wizards, which, that's the thing. It's like if we just, started making these moves at the deadline last year, we could have gotten so much more back, don't you think?
Probably, but we were under the old regime. Like we didn't have this
Hmm.
new GM in place yet. But to your point, yeah, I mean, if we had gone to, I don't know, even to Phoenix, like at during the year last year, and said, "Hey, Beal wants to come," I mean, they wouldn't have had the first round picks to give us. So I guess that's really a moot point. So let's pick another team. Maybe Miami, being somebody that was rumored that really wanted
Hmm.
Beal. If they had sent him to Miami, Miami would have sent us a few picks. Like maybe Beal got them over the hump against the Nuggets, which I don't think it would have.
No,
Jokic
I don't
is
think so either.
a joke. I don't understand how he's so good at basketball, but it's just, yeah, it was a poor decision not to move off of it. But granted, I think I see their thought process there. It goes back a little bit to what I said earlier, where when those guys were healthy, we had an okay record. Like I don't think it was great, but when all three of the guys were healthy, I think we had a winning record. And I think they kept saying, if we can just hang on, and we did for the majority of the season, hang on to like a lower end playoff team. And we said, if we can just hang on here and these guys come back healthy for the run in after the All Star break, maybe we can push up to be like a 7 or a 6 seed, and we
Hmm.
might be all right. That's not what happened. Obviously, we went the entire other direction, and that's how we ended up as with the eighth overall pick in the draft. But it's just, again, it's just a poorly run team now having to clean up a mess. Like
Yeah.
I think he's trying to make the best of his bad situation that he's been given in Washington. And
Right.
to his
Well,
credit, I mean, he's flipping it for assets, but the team's going to be terrible this year.
yeah. And that's the thing. It's been just a lot of, because I mean, yeah, the old regime was not what I liked, but I have to give Tommy Shepard credit. The Russell Westbrook trade, the John Wall for Russell Westbrook trade was a good trade. And he ended up spending Westbrook for a lot of good assets. Just didn't really work it out. I mean, I think you like to say a broken clock is right twice a day. So I mean, there were some good moves made by them, but like you said, it's just is what it is. We had to clean up the mess. We had to put out the fire that the last regime started. And then that leads us to our next trade, which is probably the best of the three. Chris Paul for Jordan Poole, right? I mean, you'd agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think 100%. Jordan Poole's probably the only player that is now going to be wearing a Washington Wizards jersey
Mm-hmm.
that is a usable NBA player.
Oh, he's gonna
I
pad
mean,
his stats here. He's gonna
he might average 40, man. Like
he's
that's
gonna break all of Gill's single game records and what
he
have
might.
you.
Like he's just going to take 50 shots a game. There's no one else to shoot the basketball. I mean, like I think the starting lineup right now is looking like Tyus Jones, Jordan Poole. I think Corey Crispit, if you remember him,
Yeah, I
the guy
remember
we
Kispert,
draft.
of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
guy we
with
drafted out
Denny
of.
and then Gafford, right?
Yeah, I mean Denny
That's a
is.
small lineup.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think Crispert is what 6'9", 6'8".
Yeah,
Gafford's not that
but
big
he's not
either.
a
So
yeah, but he's a guard. Like I mean,
yeah,
he
he's a
can't.
wing. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna play small ball. I mean, it might be fun to watch us. It better be fun to watch us. Have
You're
you
the
seen those
first person to
new?
say that about the Washington Wizards in years, but
I mean, if they go full small ball, man, and just say, hey, we're going to score a gazillion points, at least that might be entertaining. We're probably not going to be able to score a gazillion points, but we might try.
yeah, I don't know much about Jordan
But
Poole, but I hear defense is not what he's known for.
that is true. What he is known for, though, is putting up 40 points when there are some very attractive females on the courtside seats.
Is that for real? Is that his
That
thing?
like actually legitimately it's a thing, yeah. And what would be really great, have you seen these new absurd seats the Wizards are putting
I
in?
did see this. Yeah, for those who don't know, there's some kind of well, go ahead and describe it,
Yeah,
Manoli.
they're putting in courtside seats behind the hoop, so I'll call them baseline courtside seats. But what they're doing is they've removed all of the actual like rows of seats, and they're creating a VIP section with tabletops where they'll set 4 or 6 people at each of the tabletops. The season ticket for one of those tables is 126,000, I want to say, for one of the tables. So that roughly math comes out to like $500 a ticket per
Oh
game or
my
per
God.
seat. And it comes with a 5-course dinner. And if you read the Wizards website, it literally says, we understand the want in this area, meaning DC,
Hmm.
for ultra VIP experiences. So that's the reason they're putting this in, which, okay, great, but we can't put a good team on the court. So
Yeah, I
who
gotta
the
say that
fuck
sounds
is
like
going to come watch this, this nonsense from those seats?
seriously, that sounds like a fucking nightmare if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just silly. But to the original point of this, I do think that Jordan Poole might be a usable player. I just it's just one player though. Like
Hmm.
I think he's got 3 years left on his deal. I think
Hmm.
that the Golden State Warriors gave him actually a pretty good deal. I think it was like four
I think
years,
they
a
gave him the
hundred.
max that they could
That
have.
yeah, they could. Yeah. So like I mean, the good news is I think it's basically like he's a usable player now, but he can't be in the plans for the long term unless he
No,
just comes in and kills it
he
because
does
we just
kind
don't
of.
have any assets around him.
I agree. He does kind of excite me as a guy who could settle the career highs in the next 2 years as the only player in our team that's worth a damn, and then become an interesting trade chip in that final year of his deal as a guy that could help out, a team chasing a ring or a team that loses somebody to injury because
Yeah.
he looks a little better, a little more mature, and then he'll have an expiring deal to its team
Yeah.
friendly.
Yeah.
But
I
that's
agree with
pretty
that.
much what we're looking for. And this just kind of brings us to the draft. And the main thing I want to talk about is how this team is doing whatever it can to ensure it finishes bottom 12 next year because they cannot afford to lose their lottery pick to the Knicks. And you turned me on to this, right? We sent a top 12 protected first round pick to the Knicks a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. And they just cannot afford to lose that pick. So they're just going to do whatever they can to be as bad as possible next season, regardless
Yeah.
of the value that they foresee in the draft. Is that
Yeah.
is that
And
what
I
you? Yeah.
mean, that's exactly what they've done. And really, if you look at who we've drafted here, right? Bilal Coulibaly at the number 8 slot. Technically, the 7, we used a couple of these useless second round picks we got in the Beal trade
Mm-hmm.
and flipped it with Indiana
So we just
for
were
this
telegraphing what
player.
we wanted, right? Because Indiana played us like a fiddle.
So if you read any of the back end reports on the draft last night, what you see is that teams that were in that 10 to 12 range all really liked Bilal Coulibaly. And the rumor was is that they were going to trade up above us because to your point, I think everyone knew that's who we wanted, and
Mm-hmm.
they were coming for him. So I think the Wizards preemptively said, you know what, fuck it, these second round picks are pretty useless anyways. Let's dump a couple of them, and we swapped draft picks with the Pacers. I actually don't even remember who we actually took.
Uh,
Uh,
the
I have
Walker, the kid from
is it from
Houston.
Houston?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jarace Walker.
yeah, Jarace Walker.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we swapped him with 2 second round picks up to the Pacers. So if we got our guy, we got our guy. I mean, if we talk a little bit about Bilal Coulibaly, I mean, he's from
Yeah, let's
France.
talk about him. He's a
He,
French teammate of Wembenyama who scored
yeah,
like 2 points a game or something, right?
basically, yeah. So like his story, it's an interesting story actually. Like he was on the under 20s team or the under 21 team, was playing really well, and after having some really big games, got called up to the actual pro level
Mm-hmm.
um, in France. And what ended up happening is that through some injuries, he got a chance on the court. Whilst the scouts were there to see Wemby, they said, "Hey, this guy actually can kind of play too. Who's this kid?"
Mm-hmm.
And originally, he was supposed to come over next year. He was not supposed to come over this year into the draft. And because of this meteoric rise that he took while they were there watching Wembanyama, um, they said, "Yeah, maybe this kid should come now. He's pretty good. I mean, he's got the raw skills. He's tall. Looks like he has a decent shot on him.
It's all length, right? He
I
has like a 7'2"
Yeah,
wingspan. He's
he
six foot
does. Yeah,
seven,
yeah. I mean,
but he's not a
I'm trying to.
shooter or anything, right? He's just
I
all
don't think he's a
potential.
shooter. Yeah, I think it's all potential. So I mean, I think like I'm trying to think of someone to maybe compare him to just at that size. This is gonna be a really shit comparison, but think maybe someone like why am I blanking on his name? who plays for the Clippers with Paul George? Kawhi Leonard.
Kawhi Leonard.
To think Kawhi Leonard frame, like he needs to
Okay.
grow into it, but
Does
he's
he have
that
those
height and
hands?
he's that length. Yeah, he's just lanky. He's just huge in his limbs, and like that's kind of what they went with. I mean, this reminds me a lot of a pick we would have made 10 years ago when we didn't really know who to pick and we like drafted somebody and stashed him in Europe. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's coming and I think he's going to be on the team.
No, you think he's going to play this season for us? Really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what else are they going to do with it? What better place for him to learn how to play in the NBA than play on
I
the
think
Wizards?
he's got G League written all over him.
Maybe. I mean, could be, but again, like we have no one else that can fucking play. So
Yeah,
like,
we got to fill out the floor.
if he needs to get in there and take his lumps, and again, we want to lose games, we're going the 76ers direction, man. We're going to trust the fucking process and pray that an Embiid falls in our lap. Like that's the game plan here. So why not throw him in there? Who cares? Like we're going to lose. We're only going to win 15 or 20 games anyway. We're probably going to be the worst team in the league. So let the kid learn how the league's played. And same goes for the kid we drafted in the second round. I mean, again, we had the 35th pick. We dumped it. I don't actually remember what that trade was, but we ended up not drafting at 35. We ended up drafting at 42, and that's where we took this kid, Tristan. I'm going to butcher this guy's last name. It's Vukcevic, I think it's how you get.
Yeah, something like that.
That sounds right. And again, man, I think this is somebody that seems to me that's just like kind of fallen in our laps, and not in a good way. Like the Wizards historically have this way of going to draft workouts and going to the combine and watching players are just kind of falling in love with someone who just happened to have a good day that day. And to me, that's what it sounds like about this Tristan kid did. He showed up at the combine. Apparently he's a good jump shooter. He's 7 feet tall.
Yeah, because I mean, up until we took him, we have no size anymore. Like
basically,
yeah.
So I know very little about him other than that. Like he can shoot from what I've heard, and I think he's actually pretty big. He's only 20 though, so he's gonna have to grow into his body. I think his dad was a professional basketball player too, so at least he comes from some good genes. So we'll see. I mean, again, that's to use your phrase again. It's a lottery ticket. Like we pray that we just drafted Jokic at 42, like the Nuggets did at whatever he went 47. I think is where Jokic went. So that's what they're hoping for.
Gotcha. Well, we got to wrap up here in a minute, but just a couple thoughts from me on Bilal Coulibaly. Look, I don't love the pick. I'm reading here player comparison is shades of Mikal Bridges and Victor Oladipo. Seems kind of unearned to me.
Oladipo
okay,
was
right
until he got hurt, man.
Yeah. And
remember when Oladipo tore us apart in college when he played at Indiana?
When he played,
you had him in the first round of the tournament. He tore us apart. Anyway, I don't mean to cut you off, but
James Madison University, for everyone who was wondering, a quality institution that Manoli and I both attended. And yeah, not only did he nuke us out of the tournament, but we've never made it back since. That's how bad he beat us.
We just lost the program entirely.
But yeah, I mean, it would be awesome, but it's just the only way that we got out of this rebuild the first time, I mean, we got mad lucky, was we landed 3 top 3 picks and hit on 2 of them. And when I say hit, I mean Wall and Beal.
2.5.
I mean, we're an all pro, but I mean, yeah, I guess Porter
was terrible. A good wingman, dude.
And there really wasn't anyone else in that draft, but
that's fair.
It is what it is. But yeah, as we're kind of wrapping up here, my only last thought is Coulibaly wears number 0. Do you think they're going to give him Gil's number? Are we bringing back Agent 0?
He does not deserve Agent 0. Please do not do that to Gil. As far as I'm concerned, Gil's number needs to be up in the rafters. Not because he did anything, but because he was wonderful to watch.
Oh yeah, he definitely didn't do anything about the rest of the to drop that. You got to ignore the gun stuff.
Yeah, ignore the gun thing. Otherwise, he was glorious.
Hey, well, anyway, thanks for jumping on today, Manoli. We gotta run here, but it was great to talk to you, and thank you for everyone for listening. Any last words, Manoli? Last thoughts?
No, I think not at all, man. I think we got it all in. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me, Alex, and we'll talk soon.
All right, go Wiz. Thanks again, man.
See you, man.